Is it a mental illness or a spiritual problem? I'm Dr. Anthony Collada. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist, and I know in a lot of religious upbringings, a lot of cultures, mental health is taboo and there's no need for it. And then I also see the other side of the spectrum where people really rely heavily on the medications and are on multiple medications in order to try to live a functional lifestyle. So which one is it? Well, I'll first start with the mental illness. And typically when we see something that is a mental illness, it affects their life pretty negatively. It's typically when the thoughts, the emotions, or the behaviors really impact one's quality of life or their ability to function in life, such as at school, at work, or their relationships. And there's a lot of factors that can go on that affect someone's life in these different aspects. But from a psychiatric perspective, we typically look at the biological factors, psychological, and social factors. Biological factors, meaning what actually happens to the mind and body, that makes it difficult for one to carry out their daily life, their daily activities. Are they having like a brain process, like are going through a dementia or something like that? Are they on medications that are slowing down their thinking? Is there a family history of mental health problems like anxiety or depression, bipolar, even addictions? These tend to run in families, and people are more likely to be susceptible to these illnesses if family members are in it. Is someone using drugs or alcohol that's impacting their ability? Because a lot of times these drugs, I know cannabis is often used, but cannabis has a lot of psychiatric consequences, can be causing the mental health problems. Is it related to nutrition or activity level? Because how one eats, the activity level, if they're living a sedentary lifestyle versus an active lifestyle, those can affect mental health. And these can also be related to spiritual problems, which I'll talk a little bit more at the end. Are they going through any medical conditions that can be impacting their mental health? If people are in a lot of pain, that might affect their mood and their thoughts. If people are suffering from like an inflammatory disease, or they're suffering from an infection, that can affect their mind and body, and that can affect their mood or their ability to have energy and function. So there's several biological causes that can contribute to mental health problems. What about the psychological causes? So this can be a variety of things, but if someone's lived in an abusive atmosphere or are victims to abuse, they're more likely to develop psychological problems. It might affect their thoughts, their self-esteem. But simply put, a lot of times the psychological problems depend on how people are viewing themselves, how people view the world, how they view themselves, or how they view other people. And a lot of this can be correlated with the spiritual life as well. And then one of the other factors that as a psychiatrist we often investigate is social factors, such as how are they getting their finances? Are there any legal problems? Are they married? Are they in relationships? Any children? Job status? Any problems with the law or any military history? All these can affect one's mental health. And there's several other categories as well. And you could really go deep into someone's life and the complexity of it to really see if there's something happening in one's life that could be causing the mental health problems. But if we look at the spiritual components to mental illness, the spiritual components to disease, we can see that there's going to be a lot of overlap. Let's just take a look, for example, at the 7 cardinal sins. The 7 cardinal sins include pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth. Let's start with sloth. Sloth might be akin to living a sedentary life or not being active in your life. If you're lazy, if you're not able to work on your physical health, you're probably not going to work on your mental health that well either. And oftentimes there's a correlation with, for example, obesity and mental health problems like anxiety and depression. So certainly laziness or sloth can contribute to mental health problems. And that's going to be similar with gluttony. We know that if you eat too much, that's going to more likely lead to problems like obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. And so it's important from a spiritual perspective to have self-control over what you eat. Several studies show the importance of certain diets and nutrition on overall mental health and well-being. For example, people that eat healthier foods, they're going to more likely have less psychological problems than people who eat unhealthy foods. So if someone's gluttonous, they're not going to probably have control or be a very picky eater. They're probably going to eat whatever they want, eat junk food, and that's going to lead to not only physical problems down the road, but mental health problems down the road as well. Now, what about lust? So certainly lust can lead to problems like pornography, cheating on one's partner. Although pornography addiction is not really a mental health problem at this time, but cheating on one's partner can lead to relationship conflicts, can lead to divorce, adultery. It can be a form of trauma, especially for the one who's betrayed by their partner and being cheated on. So certainly if someone is not able to control their lusts, that could have some mental health implications down the road. Now, what about greed? So one thing that comes to mind is gambling. Gambling can be an addiction, which really impacts people's life negatively. And so if someone is gambling to get more money, if it's a form of greed, yeah, that can have problems down the road. Or if someone is working so much and trying to accumulate wealth, trying to accumulate money, where they neglect other parts of their life, they neglect their health, they neglect their family, they neglect their friendships, that too could be a spiritual cause of mental health problems that happen down the road. Because if someone doesn't have that supportive community, that supportive friendships, it's really going to negatively impact how they handle stress and their environment. Pride, I think, is a great example because that's certainly a spiritual problem, but that can lead to a lot of problems in one's daily life. For example, if someone is working in a work environment and they're prideful, they're probably not going to handle directions very well from their boss, or they're probably not going to work well with other colleagues, and they're going to lose their jobs. Someone who can't stay in a job can certainly be a sign of mental health problems. Plus, it could be something that just adds stress to their life. Maybe they get stressed because they can't hold a job, they're short on finances, they're more reliant on other people to help them make ends meet. Also, if you think about pride in a relationship between a husband and wife, that may make a lot of conflict between the two, thinking maybe one is better than the other and so forth. So I think we can see that there can be a lot of overlap between spiritual problems and mental health problems. And so I can't really give a definitive spiritual approach to a lot of these mental health issues. But what I can say is that if someone's quality of life is affected by their thoughts, their emotions, or their behaviors, then it's important to seek a mental health professional, such as a psychiatrist or a therapist, to try to address it. But it's also important to look at the spiritual component as well. And whatever one's religion or one's faith is, try to do your part into going into that religious faith or that community to try and get health and healing as well through that process. Because it's kind of both processes together that is going to provide health and healing for someone who's sick. In fact, I do find oftentimes that I think the spiritual component even can triumph over the mental health component, because psychology and psychiatry has some truths to it, but Christianity has the absolute truth.